You've heard of Michael Hutchence in excess. You move on from Michael Hutchence, you go to Kurt Cobain. Another of the biggest musicians who you will ever hear, who themselves each committed suicide. And you're looking at each one of them and you're thinking, if your music really helped you, what was the need of committing suicide? Surely the music was good for you. It should have given you peace. It should have given you relaxation. On the contrary, for each of these musicians, you found that their death, they couldn't help themselves, number one. Number two, you found an evoking of reaction, an evoking of emotion coming forward from many people. There's a famous Egyptian singer who I'm sure you would have all heard of, and I know our people have a way about us that the music of the West is haram, but the music of the Arabs is all halal, because the Arabs are all Muslims, so therefore it's all halal for us to listen to their music. Some of you would have heard of someone like Abdul Halim Hafiz, and when Abdul Halim Hafiz died in Egypt, you found people committing suicide because their favorite musician had died. The people weren't able to control it. Instead of saying, okay, let's forget about it, you found people in Egypt coming forward and committing suicide, because that person who had died was so important to their life that they had taken him as their Lord. And as the Quran says, have you seen those who have taken their desires as their Lord? So here is another example in the world of music. One finds, for example, even that there are famous personalities in history where there is one question alongside their name. What is the question? Where were you on the day that he died? I'm sure all of you have heard this question posed against certain personalities. When John Lennon, head of the Beatles, when he died, until today, the first question is asked to people who heard about John Lennon. The first question is, where were you when John Lennon died? And then people go on to ask, what happened? Why did that guy kill John Lennon? Was there a different reason? Was it his wife who was involved? Was it something else? And you find that human being is inquisitive about every single area which surrounds death. Even Diana, when she died, you should have seen the wave of emotion that rocked London, indeed rocked the UK. That in Harrods Superstore, which is one of the most prestigious stores in London, you found that Muhammad al-Fayed devotes a whole memorial to Diana and his son Dodi for what happened. And you find in the UK, every single person who hears about this will come forward and say to you, where were you on the day that Diana died? Even a whole film is produced over an incident that the human being until today hasn't figured out. And the film was called JFK. Many of you saw JFK, and in this film JFK you found how they tried to investigate who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy. What surrounded the killing of John Fitzgerald Kennedy? Was it Harvey Oswald? Was it someone else involved? Was it the CIA who wanted him to be finished? The human being is always inquisitive about the concept of death. He seeks to understand it from every angle. He wants to know who were the perpetrators. He wants to see death in its different light. Because we find death comes in so many angles. Either you find it on one angle, it has come as suicide. In another angle, it has come as murder. In another angle, it has come as accidental. And indeed, in a fourth angle, it comes as the highest level that a human being can ever reach, known as martyrdom, which we will come to in due course. Indeed, one notices furthermore that in the world of film, many of the directors in the world of film, when talking about films or when directing films, give an angle on death which they believe the human being needs to examine. Notice how many of the films that have been directed, the human being is seeing death from a different way. There was a film which was directed a few years ago called Final Destination, highlighting the whole idea that the human being is seeking to understand what is his final destination, what is going to happen in that final destination. And I remember in the second part of that final destination, it shows you how death can sometimes be a coincidence or sometimes be something which has been carefully planned. And in one particular instance, I remember it happened to me personally, where we were watching this film Final Destination, and there was an incident which occurred where the person is in a car behind a truck where there are these logs of wood. And many of you would have seen this part. And I remember watching the film the next morning, and my friends in London will verify this. The next morning we've all woken up, and when we've woken up we're all going out on a journey. And so we're in the car and we've stopped at a traffic light, And so we're talking, and you know one of those traffic lights when red goes on for about 16 minutes, it just continues forever. You're looking and you're waiting, and then you're seeing in front of you, there's a truck with that much wood on it, like the film we saw yesterday. And there's that moment when you're all looking at each other and you're thinking, no, you're not thinking what I'm thinking. You know, at that moment, each one of us remembers the film, and each one of us begins to contemplate what is happening. In that film, Final Destination, the director tried to show you that death can come at any moment. No one's given you a license to say, I'll let you live until 70 or 75 or 78. Because some of our people, the attitude of some of our parents, when they come forward, when their children become religious, you find either the mother or the father or the auntie or the grandmother come forward, and what do they say? You want him to become a mullah from now? Let him relax. He's got a few years left in him. Let him go here, let him go there, let him play here, let him have a chance to see. Because the human being always thinks that he is going to live what he feels others are living. 70, 75, 62, 65. He never imagines the concept that death can come to him at any moment, anywhere. So that film sought to examine death from that angle. Another film, such as Gladiator, sought to examine death about how a person can completely overcome death. How actually a person finds honor when he dies. How actually a person doesn't mind a sword finishing him off. Because he recognizes that the aim and what is coming later on is greater than what mankind can ever imagine. And that is why in that film, we notice in the final moments when he is being killed, all he sees is that wife of his which was brutally killed, and that son of his who he has not seen for a long time. And all he imagines is that death is simply a bridge towards the higher cause. So here you found another film which sought to examine another angle. And the third film which looks at an Oscar-winning performance was a film which came out called $1 Million Baby. And this film came out to show how the human being within his own life can actually die before he has even lived. Some of us are actually dead. Imam Ali used to say, mankind is dead at the moment. It is only when he dies that he awakes. At this moment, some of us, the way we are living, we are actually dead. There is no service to Al Muhammad. There is no aim at all in our life. There is no point in we don't see a point in actually furthering our understanding of our usul and our furu'. And therefore, in some cases, you find some people are walking one way and the other, but in reality, they are not worth more than anyone else who is existing. And that's why in that film, what the director tried to show is that the human being must wake up from his life where sometimes he doesn't recognize that he has died before he has eventually died. Some of us do need that wake-up call. And so therefore that film analyzes from that angle. And that's why the world of death, and especially the world of funerals, has become amongst the biggest industries. You find now, I can't believe some funerals these days, that I don't know anymore what's the funeral and what's the party. You find the guy, he's more dressed up than anyone, even though it's that side. And the daughter, she's more dressed up than anyone. And the amount of champagne that is around, you would think the guys come for a party, not because someone died. And they actually expect you to smile and laugh at the funeral. But you find that this whole funeral industry has become so strong in the world today, and is looked at from so many different angles, highlighting how the human being seeks to understand death from all its different visages. And that's why Rumi, the famous poet, once explained death and how mankind views death from his own way. Rumi, as you know, came out with poetry which tried to bring out wisdom. And in his way, he tried to show about how mankind needed to wake up in his life. What does he say in poetry? He talks about how there is a man who has a bird within a cage, and that this bird sings for him the most beautiful of songs. And that this man comes towards the bird in the cage, and he says, "Oh bird, I am going towards your friends in the jungle. Is there any message that you would like me to take for you?" And the bird replies, "Oh my master, take for me the message that I am a captive in my world, and yet I cannot still find ease in my heart. I am trying to understand the very concept of freedom." So Rumi says this man goes out, and he goes to the jungle, and he comes to the birds in the jungle, and he sees one bird, and he says to this one bird, "I have a message for you." And the bird says, "What's the message?" says, give me first your message. So the bird says, no, you tell me what is your message. So the man says, my message is from the bird that I own, who has told me that I am someone who is seeking to flee from my captivity. What is your reply? He says, at this moment, all I saw was that this bird simply died on its spot. So the man says, I returned to the bird that I own. And my bird looked at me and said to me, oh my owner, what is the messages that you got from the jungle? What is the messages? And the owner replied, I